I hear a lot of people mistakenly discussing the Watts case and mistakenly saying that the CBI agents wanted to wrap up the case and that's why they rushed the confession. They needed to get the confession out of Chris Watts to wrap the case up. That's not the case. People seem to forget that the CBI agents, the police and the authorities didn't know where the bodies were. That was the primary thing, to find Shan'Ann and the girls. If they were still alive, they could rescue them, or if they were dead, to retrieve their bodies so they could be buried. A lot of people don't realize that. They don't remember, they don't recall, they don't realize that when the CBI agents were interviewing Chris Watts, trying to get him to admit, not even a confession, trying to get him to admit what he did, that their primary concern at that time was to retrieve those bodies, not to wrap up the case. And a lot of people, they overlook this. They needed a confession out of him. They needed him to admit what he did. More importantly, they needed him to admit what he did so they could locate and retrieve those bodies, not so that they could wrap the case up. In true crime on YouTube, it's not really the truth that matters. It's really sensationalism. It's conspiracy theories. It's what gets the views. It's what gets the clicks, what gets the ratings. It's not about truth. It's not about the truth on YouTube. The rubbish, the nonsense, the absurdities that come out of Kim Kaufman's mouth, she actually believes her own lies. This stuff is all coming from the Watts as well. I mean, they want their son's name to be cleared for killing the children. It's all right to them that he killed Shan'Ann because that was just a crime of passion, according to them. They're trying to clear his name for killing the children because they don't want that stigma attached to their name. And whether or not he killed one person or three people, I believe that he did it all. But even if he only killed Shan'Ann, that would never get him out of prison. He would still be going to prison for the rest of his life, even if he just killed her. There's no pass. It wasn't justified. Second of all, Chris Watts is a pathological liar, and everything he says has to be confirmed. He said that Shan'Ann strangled the girls. There were no strangulation marks on their necks from her hands in the autopsy, but there was strangulation marks on her neck from his hands in the autopsy. So right there, we have a stone cold liar who only cares about himself. And it's interesting that his parents have decided to go with his first confession because that is the confession that is more convenient for them, because they disliked Shan'Ann so much that everything has to be her fault. Shan'Ann is the scapegoat. They do not want the stigma of being parents to a child killer because they idealize their son, and to them he is a golden boy. To them he is just all perfect, ideal, the perfect son he was. Well, he wasn't the perfect son. He got caught with his pants down, and he couldn't even get the murders of his family right. He botched the investigation. He lied. He got caught in lie after lie. And guess what? He told a co-worker that during that time frame that he was going to be there at the work site. Don't worry about it. He said, I'll be there at that work site, because he knew that he wanted privacy and he wanted to be alone so that he could bury his family members. He knew exactly how those kids were put through the hatch on top of those oil tanks because he did it. No innocent person is going to put their children in oil tanks, okay? And I was just listening to Kim Kaufman babbling on for about 4 hours, talking about how the media lied and Tammy lied. There's no bigger liar in the Watts case than Chris Watts himself, okay? He's the biggest liar in all of this, and he's not a very good one, and that's why he ended up where he is. All I can say is not only that he's never getting out, but the biggest mistake that the Ruseks made, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing their name properly, so please do forgive me, Shan'Ann's family, the biggest mistake they made was that they did not seek the death penalty for this piece of you know what the next word would be. They should have sought the death penalty for Chris Watts and not allowed him to continue manipulating people from his prison cell. The other thing I want to say about the Watts is that I hope they spend every single dime of their money and bankrupt themselves on hiring lawyers for Chris Watts, because they'll be wasting their money, because he'll never, ever get out. And as for Ronnie Watts saying that Chris called Shan'Ann evil and that Ronnie Watts believed that Shan'Ann was evil, well, that's just like the pot calling the kettle black, because there's no one more evil in the Watts case than Chris Watts himself. He blew up his family's life. He ruined his life. He ruined his family's life. He will be in prison for the remainder of his life until he dies or manages to escape. I mean, there's no one more evil than him to commit the crimes that he did, to try and cover up the crimes in the way that he did, to continue texting his mistress while those children were sinking in those oil tanks. There's no one more evil than Chris Watts. No one in the Watts case. He is, for him to call Shan'Ann evil and for his father to say that Shan'Ann is evil, the hypocrisy is just astounding. I mean, it's just absolutely astounding. No, your son isn't innocent, Ronnie. Your son isn't innocent, Cindy. Your son is guilty and he will remain in prison for the rest of his life. Your appeals are not going to work, but I do beg you, I do urge you to spend every cent that you have on lawyers to defend him, to try and get him out, because you'll be wasting every cent.